All right. Hello, hello, everybody. It is a fine gray Tuesday here in San Antonio. I'm incredibly excited. We have finished our 2020 Geekdom Pre-Accelerator evening sessions as of last Thursday. These founders were troopers. Man, did they bring their A game. Our mentors were absolutely stunning and amazing this year, as were our speakers. So it was a phenomenal way to conclude a really great program during an uncertain time. And it is my absolute pleasure to bring to you our final startup founder for the 2020 Pre-Accelerator, Nigel Leblanc from Cyber Warrior Network. Before we dive into our interview with Nigel, I just like to remind everybody that we do have a town hall meeting this Thursday at 10:30 a.m. with the one and only Charles Wooden and our new VP of Operations, Philip Hernandez. We're going to be talking about our intensive testing pilot, what's happening at Geekdom, how you guys can stay involved. So please be sure to register for that. You can find it on Eventbrite. We'd love to stay connected with you and include you in this process. And with that, Nigel, I would absolutely love it if you could give a little background about yourself. How did you get started into this whole world, and how did you get into launching the Cyber Warrior Network?
Well, first off, Joyce, I'd like to say thank you for having CyberWraith Network as a part of the Pre-Accelerator program. It's been tremendously helpful, and we're very grateful for it. So our journey at CyberWraith Network started with me as the veteran cyber program manager for the state of Maryland. And I held that title from 2014 to 2016. And probably, I think about 2 or 3 weeks into the job, I was inundated with calls and emails from vets who were transitioning out. And keep in mind, we're in Maryland, so we have Fort Meade and NSA, right there. But they're saying, "Hey, I have cybersecurity experience. I'm having a hard time connecting with employers. I'm having a hard time getting jobs." Right. On the flip side, part of my job in that role was to help promote Cyber Maryland. So we put on the Cyber Maryland conference. We were working with all of the large federal agencies, along with a lot of large employers, and they were saying, "Hey, there's all these great vets we keep hearing about. We'd like to get them hired." So I said, "All right." I took about 40, 50 some resumes, and I sent it to a whole bunch of employers, and then kind of following back up with them. I was surprised only a handful got interviews, and maybe 1 or 2 got hired. So I was saying, what's the disconnect right here, right? So that's really the the thought process in order to start Cyber Warrior Network. And initially, when I thought about this thing, I said, okay, I'll build a better military translation tool, right, to help both employers and military members kind of bridge that gap, right? And then part of the issue when we're doing more and more conversations with these employers, we figured out really quickly that we had to kind of create something that would actually validate hands-on keyboard experience. So it has morphed into what we have here today.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's really exciting, the work that you guys are doing. It's cutting edge in terms of like how you approach workforce training solutions, how you approach cybersecurity, and definitely capitalizing on the momentum that's building in the esports and gaming communities. I know that you're not a sole founder. Do you want to take a little minute to like give a bit more about your team and how great they are and kind of what they bring to the table too?
Yes. So we have eight of us on the team, and we're a scrappy startup. We work nights and weekends. We all have day jobs, but we are all committed to this. I met my co-founder, Justin. He is former Army, and by the way, I'm Air Force, so we won't hold that against him. But so he's Army, he's a data scientist, and he also does cybersecurity. Very fortunate to meet him, and then we grew the team from there, right? We brought on subject matter experts. We have 2 data scientists totally on the team. Part of our team was, essentially people like there was one guy who he actually founded he helped start the first network operations center for the Air Force, right? So we have that type of subject matter expert in and around the team, with our extended team, with our advisors, with people who are very, very much smarter than myself, who help us kind of create the solution and go to market strategy.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I met a couple of, your founders or your team members during the pre-accelerator, and they seem like really great additions to the team. You guys have really produce like a well-rounded group of people, which I think makes for the best kinds of teams or companies, is when you have those subject matter experts or those different perspectives and experiences that really kind of smooth all the edges, and give you like the best product that's available. So kudos to you guys for sourcing really great talent, in addition to sourcing a really great product and idea. So how did you guys actually go about building the product? I know you kind of started talking about what initiated this for you and kind of how it's changed a little bit over time, but when building your first product, I know that founders can kind of struggle with taking their ideas from concept to like, prototyping and frameworking or whatever. How did you guys approach building out, your initial pilot or proof of concept?
So I'll give you this perspective from two ends: the product itself, and then our journey with the building the team, as you mentioned. I'm very fortunate at this point, and Justin is my co-founder, by the way. So very fortunate that we have this team, but it was a really, really long journey to get here. So at the end of 2016, when I moved back to San Antonio, I was obviously out there trying to find a co-founder, right? So Justin ended up being our fourth, or my fourth, or the company's fourth co-founder. And think about a startup trying to get a data scientist, right? Just regular companies are a hard time trying to find a data scientist who has enough time to do some type of spare project, right? So unfortunately, my first, and this kind of hits home with me because, and also just in the military community, my first CTOing, when we started, he had to step down because he had brain cancer, and he was a former Navy guy who kind of got sick because of being exposed to all the nuclear stuff on subs, right? So then I went with two other guys who just great, brilliant data scientists, but just didn't have the time, right? So met Justin and we sat down, and from day one, it was about how do we build something that's better than better than just we didn't want another applicant tracking system. We didn't want another job board, and we wanted to be able to validate hands-on keyboard experience, right? So and we started off with this algorithm that not only could translate military cyber jobs to any civilian cybersecurity job, but more and more we're starting to talk to employers. They were saying, hey, okay, this is great, awesome, but why don't you do this for college students? Why don't you do this for essentially the entire public or the civilian population? I said, okay, we'll go ahead and do that. Can we do that? Yes, check, we can do that. And then in the early customer development conversations, we presented this cyber dossiers, for lack of a better term, right? Which showed where these guys ranked in terms of their knowledge, skills, and abilities. But still, there was a gap that we had to bridge with bringing the employers, the educators, and the actual cyber practitioners all in one place, right? So we took a step back. We discovered this game, reached out to the company immediately. We got the rights to use the game, and then we built our algorithm to track or to validate hands-on keyboard experience while people are playing the game. And then we take that, and instead of a cyber dossier, we're actually building trusted cyber pipelines or cyber talent pipelines with the data output, with the triggers that we created inside the game for our algorithm.
That's awesome. I mean, thank you so much for taking us to those different aspects of building out the product. I know that one of the biggest pain points founding teams and like making sure that you have the right people in place to carry you forward, because so much can change, right? Like it's not just about whether or not you have the right experts in the room, but whether or not you have the right people to weather all the storms, that like timing issues that are completely removed from any goals that you have as a business or traction that you might have, that can come up. And so kudos to you for speaking about it, because I think that is definitely something that is learned as you move forward, and you only get better once you've kind of gone through those hardships. But if it's the very lucky, fortunate few, I think, who have really solid founding teams that last, from the right off the bat, like from the get-go. And then in terms of the product development, thank you for taking us through that as well, because, there are a lot of people out there who, as are really curious about this space and how do I get my ideas out there and how do I have like a tangible outlet for whatever it is that I'm trying to build. This is just a shout out to anybody who's watching on our Facebook or our YouTube videos. Go ahead and drop your questions or comments, to Nigel or to myself. We'll definitely make sure that we get them here on our side and get those answered for you. We definitely want to hear from you and learn more about what it is that Nigel can share with you if it can help you in your journey. So moving on a little bit, so you built the product, you have the team, you have the initial framework for the stuff to start putting it in the hands of customers. Can you talk about, sourcing customers and what that was like for you guys going out there and putting it in the hands of people to learn and to change over time?
So with our journey when we started, and it's kind of ironic because we have only defined our true customer during the pre-accelerator, right? When we talk about cybersecurity and who's looking for talent, you can get pulled in multiple directions, right? So are you going to be a training company? Are you going to be just a sourcing for recruiters? Or is this something that you're going to essentially kind of take up the chain and take it to a C-suite level, right? So when we started talking to and I leveraged a lot of the relationships that I had in Maryland because this was at the top of everybody's list, right? Then and now, how do we get the right talent when it comes to cybersecurity, right? So that got me into the door, just have a conversation with these people, right? Like, some of the relationships I've created was literally just reaching out on LinkedIn to, I take, for example, the CEO of Symantec, right? When will you get an audience with somebody like that? Because it's such a big issue, So we started asking these questions, but we were asking the wrong questions because we had the hypothesis, which we stuck with, that this was only for HR people, right? This was only for HR folks. That's it. And we kind of, belabored that entire process. But only within the last 4 to 6 months, after we've gotten a lot of traction with the game, we get a lot of feedback after people use the game and say, hey, by the way, did you think of using it like this? Or did you think of using it this way, right? And what we're finding out is that people are, or our early adopters are actually people who just want to use it for tournament and identifying talent within that. So we're replacing hackathons or capture the flags in that kind of, if you put it in that perspective, so much so to the fact that we were the first esports, cyber warfare esports program to host a tournament at DEF CON, which is, the largest hacking convention or event, on the planet. So just understanding that process, taking that iteration, not being so married to one thing and just kind of moving with it. And something that you mentioned about being fortunate to have a good team, from a founder and Justin as well, from a co-founder perspective with the rest of the team, we are really lucky because there's been so many times that I've asked the team to, hey, dump this and we're going this route. And, it wasn't a hard transition anytime we're getting that iteration from customers in order to move forward.
I mean, there's just so many great things to unpack from, what you just talked about. I love the fact that you guys understand that, your assumptions about what your customers' needs are and who your customers even are. Can change, and especially being open to getting that feedback. Like, actually, there's lots of creative ways that you can play this, and this might be a better place to position you. And those can be really difficult, hard pivots. And having that team to back you up is immensely, helpful and definitely necessary, especially if you're already launched and you have all these things in play and you have other customers. How do you transition from your existing customers or pilots into this new phase, this new development? And congratulations. It's absolutely exciting for you guys to have gotten into DEF CON, to have that tournament, to also be doing the pre-accelerator at the same time. There's just been a lot of commitment from you and the team to just be activating in this space, especially given what we're all kind of struggling with. I think too, just remembering that as you're building a product or a business, being open to, like, it's iterative. right? Like you always need to be kind of thinking where things might be going next, and having that good feedback and rapport with your customers and keeping a beat on the market is really what's going to help you guys position yourselves more competitively moving forward. And so we're just really excited to be along on this journey with you and to incorporate what you've got going on, because I remember I know it was sometime last year that you and I met, I think through some like cybersecurity thing through the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, and definitely probably shout out the camera and all the things that she's been doing. But then with the esports and gaming education series that we kicked off here as well, like it's just been really fantastic to get to collaborate with you guys in those capacities. And then also now to have spent the last 2 months with you to get to this point. Really inspirational, and we're very pleased that we can participate with you on this. So given the fact, like I know you came from Maryland, so you have some kind of, you know, a third party sort of view on what's happening in San Antonio. In your opinion, or in, you know, for you and your team, like how has the San Antonio ecosystem really helped you, or like what has stood out to you the most about what we have here to serve you?
So it was really slow going for the first year and a half when I came from Maryland to San Antonio, right? And number one, I didn't have a lot of street cred, right? Not to say that I do right now, but CWN as it stands, we didn't have an MVP, and it was just on that journey to find the right co-founder, right? So that was like kind of like the dating period. And San Antonio is very forward thinking, and I like to think of San Antonio as a big little city, right? Where there's only so much there's only so much data science you can find, right? And then there's only so many people that you can actually get to come join your team. So I was kind of going through that, and I was a little bit bummed out, you know, by that process, but everybody goes through that, right? And then immediately it just seems like it was a catalyst, like you just described, right? So we had and shout out to Amanda and the folks over at the Cyber Council and the Chamber of Commerce, right? Without them and your help, we as CWN would never be where we're at right now, as far as the ecosystem, and especially Iris as well, right? So with that being said, we had the soft launch, and then it just kind of took off. And what was really, really good for us, and what we really appreciated, is all of the support and the infrastructure that Geekdom and the entire ecosystem had already established, right? So if you look at it from a couple of perspectives, you think about it from cybersecurity, that's Amanda, who kind of runs that whole kind of network right there, right? So she got us plugged in, she got us connected. You're running the esports initiative, and then you're also running with the Geekdom Pre-Accelerator. So all of these things were already in place for us, and we just benefited from it, right? This is just the hard work that all of you guys have done. So everything is in its own timing, but due to that, that's where we're here today, right? So I hope that answers your question, by the way.
No, I think it does. Thank you. And thank you for giving additional shout outs to Iris Gonzalez with Startup San Antonio. If you guys don't know about that, that is one of the best publications around. If you want to know what's happening in startup environments in San Antonio, entrepreneurism, technology, investments, that's not going to be in your major news cycles, like Iris Gonzalez's publication is definitely amazing. She also has put together a really comprehensive resource map for entrepreneurs and startups out there looking for assistance across a variety of categories. So please go ahead and subscribe to that. And then, yeah, the Cyber Council and the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce have been doing quite a bit in that space, as well as the Port of San Antonio. And then the esports and gaming initiatives that our communities have been putting together for years has just been, something that we've been able to plug into as Geekdom. And thank you for all of those kind words. Like I've been fortunate enough to see the iteration of Geekdom over the last 9 years and see it grow, as well as this ecosystem change. And I think you're right, like everything's coming in its own time. And if it takes almost 20 years to build an ecosystem, and we're approaching year 9 of activating this, like we're really starting to hit those catalytic events and start to scale. So I'm really pleased that you and several other founders in our community are at this precipice, right? Like at this point at which we can then help you guys launch, and that we do have a solid foundation for you to just plug into. I think that's the best thing, is to be able to just say, come on in, rather than hold on, we got to get this done. So thank you for that. Then we've also got, I guess, you know, taking a step back, like as you transition into being a founder, switching hats into founder entrepreneurial life, what advice can you give aspiring entrepreneurs or founders? Like, what should they be thinking and top of mind as they get ready to move into this next chapter?
Um, Being an entrepreneur is an emotional roller coaster. Um, and I was just listening to this podcast. It's by a veteran, and he talks about the mental challenges or mental health of entrepreneurs. Right? It's a journey. It's a journey, and you have to kind of embrace the good, bad, and the ugly sometimes. But there's always a lesson for you to learn, right? And there will be some um, ridiculously low lows, but there'll also be some really high highs, right? And be gentle with yourself. You think about everything that's going on with COVID, all of the other stresses that you have. We want things to happen like right now. And even with my team, that's one of the things that um, I have tried to do is to always keep their welfare and their well-being in perspective, even though we're trying to reach this collective goal, right? Another thing that I would say for aspiring entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, period, is that don't be afraid to pivot, right? Your end product may not be what you originally thought, right? And like I set out to just create something for military members. That was it. And if you would have told me that, hey, we would be, venturing into esports and do things, like, no, there's no way we're going to do that. But we were willing to listen to what the market was saying and try to capitalize on the opportunity. So don't be so short-sighted, or just to have it in. And then last thing I'll say is that, and even for me, I struggle on this too, is talk about work-life balance, but entrepreneurs are just wired a different way, right? So there'll be these, I have the saying, long days, short nights, right? Well, there's times where, we don't sleep, and it is what it is. But take some time to be with the people that you love. Take care of your family. That's the advice I would give.
I think that's exceptional advice. Thank you, Nigel. I mean, we always try to address this, because, with efforts like mindfulness in San Antonio and several of our
Hmm.
community members having backgrounds in mental health and, mindfulness meditation and a bunch of other things, like it is incredibly difficult to approach this lifestyle, especially if you haven't gotten like your feet wet yet and you're just jumping right in. Everything is a crisis, everything is a celebration, it's not normal. It will jack up your sleep cycles. It does require a lot of support and time and sacrifice for you and your families. And so I appreciate you just, if you're approaching this lifestyle, to consider those things in mind and to also have grace with yourself. I think that's, we don't give ourselves enough grace just in the day-to-day capacity. And then as a founder, if you're pulling people onto a team and you have people giving you money for things, like the burden of responsibility can be so great. And then on top of it too, just because it's such a personal manifestation of what you have inside of you to build something from nothing and to present it to people, getting caught up in what it's supposed to be or what you initially thought it was versus what it should be, is definitely a conflict for a lot of people. So that was just spectacular. And how do you kind of help balance those things for yourself? Like, what are a couple of things that help you orient, and kind of step back, take a break, and then hit it really hard when you come back?
So I think it's like probably last 4 months I've been using this app for daily meditation, right? Um, so although I don't use it as much as I should, but every day or every other day I try to get some time in there. Um, and then I try to check myself, like check myself, because I feel crappy if I go and, like, take for example, if I've been working all day, right, and then I go I go in and everybody's asleep. It's like, oh crap, I didn't, So then I try to check myself on the next day to make sure that I can spend some time with the family. So and then I work out a lot too. That is my only outlet in terms of, you know, everybody's stuck at home, COVID, so I try to keep healthy, physically and mentally.
No, thank you for that. Yeah. All great tips. Absolutely. And everyone's mindfulness, like taking care of yourself looks different. That's what makes it so difficult. I think too, is that it's not like, like you have things that you can always kind of tick off. Like, did I do these things? Yes. But what really feeds us as people is just as personal as the business ideas that we bring to the world and, how we develop relationships. And so, there's tools out there. So if you have any sort of struggles or anything like that, or you're curious, like, am I the only one feeling this way? There's a community out there to support you, and there's lots of resources to help you break, the grind habit that tends to happen as you pursue entrepreneurship and founders and startup life. So thank you. Something you did touch on that's the big elephant in the room that we always kind of want to help clarify for other founders out there who might be struggling with this too. You kind of touched on COVID-19. How has this impacted your business, or has it not impacted your business at all? When we did our interview with 10-4 Golf and Jarrett Shula, he was saying that actually golf courses were pretty immune to like what was going on with COVID because they were outdoors. For you guys, like, what has this done for your business?
So it's been kind of twofold, right? Like when COVID initially hit, we had some really big partners that was going to do some things with us, right? And then they just went dark. And you and I, we've had this conversation before, right? But so they went dark. And then interestingly enough, our biggest opportunity with DEF CON, that was possible because of COVID. So we were able to capitalize on that, right? And the overwhelming consensus is that, so DEF CON, for people who don't know it, is usually held in Las Vegas, right? And they bring in some serious crowds. So you got to fly, you have tickets, money for the travel, money for the stay, and then you also have to pay money to go into all of these different events, right? Well, for the first time, DEF CON, which, and kudos to them, and also shout out to Joseph, who runs, it used to be Texas Cyber Summit, but now Gray Hat, right? Phenomenal team. What they did was they put DEF CON completely online. So it was free. So you had hundreds of thousands, I think it ended up being like 120,000 people attending this event, right? We would have never had that exposure, or even, we would have to come up with a lot of money to go host a tournament out there, right? So that actually helped us. So one thing I would say to founders is that try to find somewhere within what's going on with COVID right now, where you could, and even if it means that you pivot even just for a little time, but try to find somewhere where you can be valuable and provide value that will kind of bring you some of the the goals that you're hoping to accomplish.
Thank you. I mean, I think that's also good advice. It can be really easy to just kind of get locked into the negative side of what is happening here, but this is also an opportunity moment for so many businesses to really reimagine what this could be like. And the nice thing about being a startup and being agile and iterative, to reiterate some things, is that you have maybe a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more adaptability to respond to these things and to pivot, like you said, and then having a really solid team behind you too, Nigel. Like, I think that just puts you in a really great position to be able to maximize whatever is coming. And I want to give a shout out to Luana Chambers Lawson for giving us so much love on Facebook. We always love your support, and definitely agree with you. This is a crazy roller coaster, and being adaptive and iterative is absolutely necessary to continue moving forward. Nigel, thank you for speaking to that. I know that a lot of people out there really appreciate your insights on how you've been dealing with this issue. So I know that you guys are actively raising some funds, or that you have been fundraising for a little while. Investments in San Antonio are picking up. We're definitely having a lot more activity from our investment ecosystem. So thank you guys out there who are showing love to our founders and writing those checks that help them grow and scale. But Nigel, can you speak a little bit about your experiences in raising and kind of what you're looking for to do post pre-accelerator?
So I wouldn't even call it a seed round. We had a pre-seed round where initially when we started, we had raised 20K, and then we have been kind of bootstrapping the entire time, right? We're at the point where we do need to go out and raise some money. So our goal is to raise $5 million and essentially do a couple of things. One, really be the first cyber warfare esports league, right? With a mission and a cause, which is to essentially make our world a safer place, and also fill the 3.5 million cybersecurity jobs that will be unfilled here coming in 2021, right? And the second thing is, there's a movement that's already been kind of fueled within San Antonio. We have the Innovation Center, we have the esports, arena being built. We hope to be able to represent, be a San Antonio startup and represent San Antonio by essentially hosting tournaments and leagues. So a couple of things that we're doing to kind of get that effort going, where we have a tournament with the 960th, which is the Cyber Warfare Air Force Reserve Command, coming in October. And then we're also going to be hosting various tournaments and leagues for some high schools and colleges in San Antonio, right? So what we're reaching out to investors, and we really want partners, right? To help us make history, to be the first cyber warfare esports league, and then to make it, be San Antonio's own.
Awesome. I mean, thank you. It's so exciting. The esports community in San Antonio is kind of like a hidden gem. We have so many talented individuals who play competitively, who have managed teams, been on teams, who have, their own streaming accounts. I think our own CEO, Charles Wood, mentioned in a podcast with the San Antonio Public Library last week. The video will be released soon, so stay tuned, that he has his own streaming channel as well. I mean, this is definitely an active part of our community. And I love seeing companies like yourself come in and partner organizations really establish the foundation to have this industry really take root in what's been happening in that space, because I think it's game changing, and it opens up so many doors for career paths and technology advancements that we aren't even necessarily even ready for yet. So thank you for being part of this as well. Oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. Okay, cool. Yep, we're coming back. So speaking of all of these things, right? And raising the money. Yes, that's what we're talking about. Raising money. So I think really hitting the nail on the head with the investors and finding partners. It's a great investor founder relationship when you have mentors or advisors built into the investment process, especially if you're early stage companies and you're really trying to take hold on the market and really trying to advance and move forward. Like, be selective about your investment partners. They're very selective about you, and you should be very selective about them. And there needs to be something beyond just the funds attached, I believe, to really make it worth, the exchange on both sides of the table, because, really, like, you're paying for assistance, you're paying for a network, they're paying to build relationships with you. And if you guys can't have great rapport and trust each other to talk about some of these hard issues, like if you're having to present to your investors and your board and there's just things that aren't really coming into light, like, it's probably not as solid of a relationship as it could be. And thankfully, we have a lot of really great investors in this community, as well as in our network outside of this community. So I think that building quality relationships anywhere, particularly when there's investment tied, is really sound advice. So Nigel, good luck with that. Yeah, go for it.
So I like to say one thing to your point about building the right relationships. So we have we've kind of we've turned down money because that particular investor or investment firm didn't share the same goal or our mission, right? And we opted to bootstrap to get us to this point, right? So for founders out there, it's a hard decision to make. And even more credit to my team, I will say this, because I had to go and be straight up with them, like, hey, I think we should walk away from this money because it's not what we are about. It's not what we have envisioned, right? And I had to tell them, like, look, we could be so much bigger than what this is, what this money could bring us if we just kind of stuck through it. And they have put their trust in me, and I'm very fortunate with that. But it's good to see that some of our bets that we kind of hedged, that it's actually coming to fruition, and the team is so much more behind our mission right now. And we would have been so stuck and just totally ruined if we had taken that early money to go in a direction that that investment firm wanted us to go in.
Thank you for that. And that transparency about, saying no. Sometimes that's the right move to make. And that is a hard choice when you've got everything on the line, you have a growing team, money is tight. Like, that's a hard choice. And it's not always, the right choice to make. Like, you guys have to decide with as much information as you have at the time to make the choice. Hindsight being what it is, and it sounds like it was still the right move for you guys, which is amazing. And getting to that point, like bootstrapping up until you can go get investment when it makes sense, when you're ready, that's what you want. You don't want to take more money than you have to, and you don't want to take it at the wrong time. And it can be difficult knowing when that time is. So kudos to you and the team again, and for letting founders know that you guys also have the ability to say, thank you, no, thank you. This isn't the right time for us. And that's not a bad thing. Good job. I mean, it's hard being a founder. You have to make so many decisions, and there's so much pressure all the time. And then you've got this big juicy carrot on the end of the stick. And so walking away from that can just seem like, man, what did we do? So, kudos for sharing that. I think that's really helpful advice. So we've talked about what this looks like. What does this mean? I have a little clip. Do you mind if I share about 10, 15 seconds of what this looks like? Okay, cool. So you guys bear with me while I switch this over and share my screen, but you're going to see a little bit of what Cyber Warrior Network was doing and what it looks like. So hold on a sec. All right, so there's all kinds of stuff that you guys can go and find about that, and we'll make sure that we drop that link in the chat, in the comments, so that way if you want to go watch the whole video, you can on YouTube. But I don't know about you guys, but when I think about like mission critical cybersecurity in San Antonio, you're thinking Department of Defense, you're talking military bases, you're talking government buildings, you're talking about a lot of boring stuff. But Nigel, that does not look boring to me. That looks like something incredibly engaging, incredibly immersive, that's super exciting to get involved with. How do people respond usually when they approach, your tournaments and stuff like that? Are they blown away by what they're doing?
Oh, absolutely. So, disclaimer out there: when I first played the game, I lost an entire weekend. So my wife was not happy about that. We are not liable for anything, if you're family members. But I'll share a couple of stories with you. So we were able to pitch at the Bank of America Cyber Summit last year, right? So pitched, and then the senior vice president for global M&A, who was at the event for Bank of America, comes up to me and said, "Hey, my 10-year-old tried to kind of lie that he was older, and he tried to download the game because I shared it with him, right? So it was like, okay, we have to give it to you. He can't just because liability, whatever it is, right? Um, so kind of fast forward to that when we were at Texas Cyber Summit last year, right? Someone's going through and we were in the hackers lair, and everybody's like, hey, come sit down and play this game. It's like, hey, I don't really have time. Well, these people, they sat down, and some of them ended up playing for multiple hours, and then came back to play every day during the 3-day conference. And to top it all off, the one of the founders for the Hack 5 brand, Pineapple Express, for your hacker, the Pineapple router, I mean, um, uh, Snubs, she sat down and played that game for over an hour. And so the reviews has been really great. In the tournaments, we've had people who've played in the June event that we had with Texas Cyber Summit. Then they played again at Red Team Village in DEF CON, and they're asking for another tournament again for the Grey Hat event. So it's really a little bit addictive and immersive. And once you kind of get into the storyline, and that's why our tagline is kind of like, Call of Duty for ethical hackers. That sums it all up. So it's a really fun game to play.
No, I mean, it definitely seems like it. And, gamification, you know, has just been sweeping through so many different industries as a way to increase like the stickiness of applications, leaderboards, reward programs, badges, all the things, adding a little bit of competition to it. You get people highly engaged. And then, because it is like Call of Duty, like, you've got this immersive experience on top of the fact that you have something that feels really familiar, right? You didn't have to go and reinvent the wheel necessarily, in the sense that you had to go and create a whole new, never been done before game, in the sense of, imagining a new universe. Like, you created your universe, but you have a similar feel that many people have, at least a decade's worth of experience. Call of Duty's been around for how long at this point? So it's just
Oh
like
yeah.
you've got this primed audience, on top of the fact that now that consoles, like the cost of consoles have gone down, mobile phones exist, desktop PC like Steam and all the others, like sources out there where people can just access and consume, mobile and online content for this stuff. Like, this is a really great platform, and I can see it going many, many ways. How have
So
you thought, if you, sorry, go ahead.
uh, I was about to say, as compelling or immersive as the game has been, it's the data behind the game, which is what really our company is about. But I'll
Ooh,
share this with
yeah.
you. So people found it hard to believe that, I think it was probably last month or the month probably before that, it was a 17-year-old who was responsible for hacking Twitter, right? And interestingly enough, so from the DEF CON challenge that we had, the top 25 people who played, we're setting up, or we've set up interviews with pretty large companies, right? Like Google, Hulu, and those. But guess what? The youngest age on that is 14 years old. There was a 14-year-old little girl who ended up being in the top 25, and she was just stoked about it, blown away by the game. So that's the kind of like the feel good, right? And then to be kind of surprised by the pockets of this untapped talent, right? An unconventional way to go out and source cyber talent. So it was pretty good. So I mean, our part of our mission is to essentially create these sustainable pipelines where we are, you go out into the high schools, the universities. Now you have a tool that can keep the students engaged. It brings that competitive nature for the whole esports. And instead of just kind of looking at esports kind of one dimensionally, where it's either you need to be behind the scenes where you're part of the business, or you need to be in front of the camera as a player, a professional player. Now you can kind of operationalize that and give give people other career opportunities to go out. So just wanted to touch on that.
No, thank you so much for touching on that. I think that that's incredibly valid. One of the reasons why I think the gaming industry has kind of struggled in getting into some of these other markets is because of the sexiness and the flash in the pan and the entertainment components. And I'm blown away by it, but that's because, when I think of traditional cybersecurity, I'm thinking like network security and gateways and like locking down all your ports and doing, penetration testing. And like all of that is really important and immensely valuable, especially if you're in the Internet of Things industry and you've got a million assets in field. You have to really figure that stuff out. So it's really cool to see the gaming side of it, but you're right, operationalizing it and the data that's driven and that ability to source unique talent is a huge component to what you're doing. And it really helps validate the power of utilizing games as a platform to drive additional value for businesses, for people, for students. I mean, I think that it's almost limitless on how you can adapt this moving forward. We have about 15 minutes left. And so I don't want to take up too much of the time talking about the razzle dazzle, because I will, because I think you guys have done a really great job with this. Shifting gears a little bit, what kinds of tools have you guys utilized? I don't want you to give away any secret sauce or anything like that, but for aspiring entrepreneurs and developers and game designers and builders, like what are some of the platforms or tools that you guys have found most helpful as you sort of created this, that maybe they could go look into or go learn skills on?
Tactically, as a founder, everybody starts as a founder by themselves, right? I have this idea, I have this epiphany, and you have to go out and you have to build a team, and then you have to go out and build believers, not necessarily customers. You have to go out and build believers, right? Number one tool that I suggest, that I recommend that every founder know inside and out, is LinkedIn. And here's the reason why. I met my co-founder via LinkedIn. Every data scientist that I spoke about in the past, was on LinkedIn, right? And it is crazy. And I kind of, Justin always says, who's my co-founder, he always say, hey, you have this LinkedIn, you're a LinkedIn Jedi. What LinkedIn voodoo do you do? Because I'll come back and say, hey, we just got connected to this person and we have a call with this person, whatever it is, right? If you are passionate about what you do, and chances are there is somebody else out there that is passionate about that as well. And it may not be their day job, it may not be their sole mission in life, but you can see that in their interests, right? And some of those people are the ones who have gone through what we're going through as entrepreneurs, as founders, right? And then just simply reaching out to them, you'd be surprised, just 2 lines, hey, my name is such and such, here's what I love your professional feedback, could you, would you connect with me, please? And people are willing to give a little bit of their time to understand what you're doing, sometimes selfishly for them, but also just sometimes because they want to see something that they're passionate about. They want to see somebody else take the torch and run with that. So number one tool, LinkedIn. I think that the second thing, just not to take up a lot of time, is that entrepreneurs need to be open to get inspiration from anywhere. I mean, anywhere. So not just, don't be, okay, I listen to books, or I read books, or think that you can't learn something from somebody who is not necessarily in your market, right? Like some of the best advice and feedback that we got through in the Geekdom Pre-Accelerator, we're not from people who were in either gaming or cybersecurity. It was from mentors who told us how to tell a story, right? So, you can always be ready to get that inspiration and get information from wherever. For me, I don't know what I don't know. So that's the 2 things. I know that wasn't a tool, but that kind of covers the whole gamut of where do you get information from.
No, I mean, I think that that's fantastic. Like if you're always open to conversation and always open to learning from other people, you're kind of primed to meet people from different backgrounds, to take on advice or suggestions. And it's a trick of founders, or like it's a skill, I should say, not a trick, but a skill that has to be developed, is understanding like when you can really take on and utilize the information that is given to you, and maybe what to kind of like save, right? Because not everything that gets thrown at you, especially people who go through our pre-accelerator where you get group mentor feedback, it can be a lot all at once. Sometimes it doesn't serve you, and it's not that the mentors are wrong, it's not that you are right or you're not being coachable. It could just be that it's not a good fit for whatever it is that they're bringing, or you're not ready to take on that information. And so I do think that that's a great thing to talk about, and leveraging your network and your community, because not everybody is as fortunate to have such a collaborative community as what we have here in San Antonio and in and outside of geekdom. But even in other places, like if you're building your network, really understanding how to tap into those resources and expand them through platforms like LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I know a lot of people are like, I don't really see the point. Like I have also had phenomenal experiences, great exchanges and conversations, and connected with people all over the world doing things that I would not have thought that we would have connected on. And it's been incredibly beneficial. So kudos to you and your team for utilizing that and finding each other on that platform. I think that's incredibly special and a really great story. So thank you for sharing. We've got about 10 minutes left. And so Nigel, one last question for you would be, now that the pre-accelerator is winding down, we're going to be, getting everything ready for the streaming event on September 18th at our watch party. So stay tuned for that Eventbrite. But coming up to that point, like, what's after? What do you have going on moving forward?
So we have a few events coming up. We have one that's very near and dear to not just me and but the fabric of our company is finally getting to do a tournament for the Air Force military. So we're preparing for that, and then we're also onboarding probably about 7 to 10 high schools and a couple of colleges, right? So that'll take us through October, and simultaneously we're also have some meetings set up with some really large partners to finish off some validation, and then also kind of hopefully get some deals kind of synced in to get some revenue in there. So that's what's next for us at CyberWraith Network.
That's so exciting. I mean, I just have to commend you and all the other founders. We've touched on this. This is not an insurmountable program to accomplish, but even in the best of times, it's a very condensed, very compact, a lot thrown at you. It's a pre-accelerator. It's supposed to give you that compression. But in this time period, it's just even more impressive that you all have consistently showed up, put in the work, met with mentors, been responsive, been super engaged, incredibly helpful and collaborative to each other. And building in a time like this, it's only going to serve you guys moving forward, because during the most catalytic or extreme events, building is always the best option. And so, Nigel, thank you so much for your engagement with this program and with our community. Please let us know how we can continue to support you moving forward. It's been a pleasure. Do you have any final words for us?
I do. I want to say shout out to my cohort. It's been a really great experience. Those other companies in this cohort they're extremely sharp and really impressive. I'm excited for what they are going to continue to do. And I've learned from every single one of them. Not just me, but Justin, my co-founder, and our CFO Brian. So it's kind of funny. We kind of have notes while everybody pitched, and hey, we should do this and we should do that. You guys did an awesome job. If you're looking, then this is directly to the rest of my cohort, and then to Geekdom and Joyce, the pre-accelerator, and everybody. And there's a lot of people behind the scenes that we know that wasn't part of it. And no need to mention names. I think people know who they are, but do want to say thank you to all of them. And then John and Leslie, phenomenal job. So thank you for the experience. If you are an entrepreneur and you are in San Antonio and you're not part of Geekdom or not affiliated or connected with them, you need to do so immediately. That's my last words.
Thank you so much, Nigel. And I agree with you on all of those points. I know I'm very biased. I'm very biased, but it is an absolute pleasure to work with amazing people like John and Leslie, who have come in with me and made this cohort, even better. I mean, we've had consistently amazing cohorts. And I don't know what it is about this one, but you guys have been incredibly supportive and collaborative of each other, which having an agnostic pre-accelerator allows for that kind of communication and support to exist. The team is here at Geekdom is exceptional. And I think it has allowed for us to provide really high value, high touch programming to you guys, especially in a time like this. And we couldn't have done it any better. And we're so glad that we were able to do it with you and the rest of the cohort and our mentors and the speakers that joined us this year. We've had more mentors than ever before. Our speakers just brought exceptional knowledge and information to what we were doing. So a huge thank you to them as well, and to the ecosystem for supporting us, as we continue to iterate this program and make it better and better. I know we're going to have another strong cohort in 2021. And with that, everybody, thank you so much. We do have our town hall on Thursday at 10:30. So please tune in and join us. We want to hear from you. We want to get engaged. We want to talk about the intensive testing pilot that we've been doing all last month and moving into September, what those goals are, what, community engagement looks like moving forward. So please stay tuned. With that, Nigel, have a fantastic week. I'll see you soon. And everybody get ready for the watch party on September 18th.